What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the pod. Welcome back to the channel. I am your co-host, Wajih and I am joined none other than your boy, Raza Ali. Um, Different type of pod today, of course. We have, us without a guest host. Figured we bring it back to our roots, essentially, and do just us two on the pod. Just your standard, matchup of the week, studs and does, Shaqtin, and then we kind of have a cool segment that we've been wanting to do. At least I've thought about it in the past, and I feel like it's fun to do, and you guys can participate after as well. So stay tuned to the end of the pod for that. Um, Rankings kind of got jumbled up this past week. Raza has been climbing the leaderboard slowly but surely.
Fifth place,
Um,
baby.
I think the turnout is Ali is number one, I'm number two, Amar's number three, Abbas number four. He's I think he dropped down to six or seven, something like that last week, and came back up with a win. And then Raza is number five. So it changes every week, and that's what I love about this week. So matchup of the week is Salik and Ali Zaid. This was the closest matchup. Ali Zaidi won by about 8 points, 9 points almost, 144 to 136. He was carried by Christian Kirk, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but also Jalen Hurts went off. Although they took the first L of the season for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts kind of just carried the load for him. There was a lot of duds, I guess I would say, for Salik. His tight end didn't perform, although at least tight end didn't either. I think as a whole, Ali's team just did better than Salik's, and it was by a small margin. But I can see Salik bouncing back. He's in sixth place. I see him. He made some really good trades this past week. So let's see him jump back up to where he belongs in the top five.
Yeah,
So in terms
real
of
real quick, I just wanted to hop
yeah,
in. I just wanted to add, like, it was kind of shocking to see, like, the Eagles game. Like, you'd think Ali trading for Jalen Hurts, he'd put up a big performance against the Commanders because they're pretty weak against their pass
yeah,
defense. He didn't do as well as expected, which is kind of surprising, but he still pulled out a win.
yeah, 100%. Um, it, I don't know how Ali is number one. To be frank, this dude is like one of the not the one of the lowest scorers, but there's other people that score a lot higher than him, and he's somehow still number one. But let's see if that stays. So moving on to the studs of the week, I mentioned Christian Kirk on Ali's team. That man for two reception TDs, 105 yards in receiving. And then he also had two passing touchdowns, which was insane. I didn't even know that. I literally just read the stat right now, and I was like, two passing touchdowns, okay. So that was very interesting to see. He went off, and I don't know. I guess previously he didn't do well, but it's cool to see that Christian Kirk lived up to the hype from the off season, and it's kind of coming to fruition. Um, and I know me and Reza are pretty high on the Jags going into the season, so it's cool to see that Christian Kirk is paying dividends.
Wait, I
And
think
then I guess
I just noticed. I think you're reading the wrong thing. He didn't have two passing touchdowns. You're thinking of your next person.
oh, okay, okay, two passing touchdowns. Yeah, I was reading under and I was like, dude, there's no way he's two passing
Yeah,
touchdowns.
that'd be
But I,
insane.
but I guess I'll go with it. In terms of my next guy, who had two passing touchdowns, was Justin Fields. My God, this man's QB1. 147 rushing yards and a tutty on the ground, and then of course two touchdowns um, on passing. A better day than Christian Kirk. If Christian Kirk did two passing touchdowns, that would be wild. I was like, how have I not heard of this? But we all make mistakes. But anyways, yeah, Justin Fields, QB1, glad to have him. What are some
Yeah,
studs on your end, bro?
dude. I just gotta say the truthers are starting to come out, like Amar.
Yeah,
Big supporter. I gotta give him a shout out for this. Big supporter of Justin Fields, and it's finally coming to fruition. He's been putting up huge stat lines, dude. Like, he's running for 147 yards. Like, he's run over 130 yards the last two games.
yeah,
Like, that's just ridiculous. Like, that's what you wish for from your running back. That's
yeah.
crazy. Like, Another person that's just been going completely insane. I mean, we mentioned him all year, and he's always gonna end up being on this list. Is Justin Jefferson. I honestly think he's made like people were saying the catch that he had. Um, you know the catch I'm talking about. The one-handed catch where the defender was basically had their hands on the ball. He literally swiped it away with one hand and came down with it. And the biggest thing
Yeah.
is that was a 4th and 12, and that was like
Fourth and
before the
18, bro.
4th and 18. Even
Yeah.
even more. Yeah, like literally he carried his team that game, putting up 193 receiving yards on 10 receptions. He also had a clutch receiving touchdown, hit the little gritty in the
Bro,
beginning of the
I
game.
got to interject and ask: is that Justin Jefferson catch better than the OBJ catch?
Dude, I have to say yes, because the OBJ catch was more, I'd say, acrobatic, but
Yeah.
the catch made by Justin Jefferson was more athletic. Like he
Yeah.
had a defender draped on him trying to steal the ball with two hands while he had
Yeah.
one hand on the ball.
That's
So he had to
crazy.
catch the ball, bring it down with one hand while also getting the defender to somehow let go of the ball. Like
Yeah.
that's insane. I don't know if you agree, but that was crazy.
Yeah,
What do you
I
think?
do agree. It's an overall better catch, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, dude. And then another stud that we're finally happy to see on this list. It's been a little while. He's been dealing with a lot of injuries, especially with his ankles. Is none other than Jonathan Taylor. He had 147 rushing yards and a good rushing touchdown. He broke a big one in this game. Yeah, dude. He was a stud this week, and unfortunately, couldn't bring Farhan to a win. But alas, he was playing a juggernaut, But I mean, he was definitely a stud by all means.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I guess another running back, in my opinion, that was didn't do so well was Cordell Patterson, and that's like one of my duds of the week. Um, he, missed some time, and then last week popped off like his first game back, and everyone thought that he was going to do well, but he only put up a couple points, I think 3 points, 18 rushing yards, and then like two reception yards, no touchdowns.
Yeah, I was kind of
Um,
surprised that they weren't like I watched that game and it seemed like
okay,
he was barely stepping on the field and they had him returning punts. So it's kind of like he was back in Chicago
weird.
or something. I don't know why. Like for some reason they just weren't giving him carries.
That is strange. Yeah, I know Tyler Algier, the backup running back, like is solid and like a bruiser back. But yeah, I mean Cordell Patterson is and Kyle Pitts is are the two like players that are the best on the field, and for some reason they just don't know how to use both of them.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awful. I think another dud is Debo. Debo's just not really. This could be a dud for the whole year. He's just not living up to expectations this year. It's really looking like Ayuk is like the main receiving force there. Kyle Shanahan's just gotta, I guess, wake up and learn how to use Debo because I feel defenses have adjusted to his wide back type of position.
Yeah, I just feel like they're not giving him like they're giving him touches, but like
Yeah,
not the important touches where he would usually score. I think that's been more catered for McCaffrey. So I feel like there is still some room for them to figure out how to, mesh all these guys well together, like with all their strengths.
yeah,
Another guy that like is this heart and soul of their. You're mentioning Cordero Patterson, who's probably like the heart and soul. Another player who's similar to him, Derrick Henry. I think I have to put him in the duds for this week.
yeah.
He didn't have the worst game. He put up 53 rushing yards and then he had two receptions for 14 receiving yards. That's not what you usually expect from Derrick Henry. You're usually expecting those big breakout games. He's always coming at you and I've heard this one saying. It's like if it's snowing in Vermont, this guy, like I saw on Twitter, like if it's snowing in Vermont, Derrick Henry will be having a good game. So I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
this is probably just a bad game.
Yeah.
But I feel like he has some really good matchups coming up in the future that he's gonna take advantage of. The other person that I think was very important, we were mentioning the Eagles game earlier. Jalen Hurts wasn't having the best game. I think Amar can definitely tell you that AJ Brown definitely did not have a good performance for him. Having one reception for 7 receiving yards, you'd expect more. He did go down with injury early in the game, but did end up coming back into the game. I don't know how much that really limited him for the rest of the game, but that's just something to think about. Hopefully, he could step it up for the next game. I think Dallas Goedert is probably out for the year, so um, let's see. Maybe they'll go more. There'll be some more targets going towards AJ Brown, but I think it's more gonna go more towards Devontae Smith. But let's see what happens. Hopefully, the Eagles can keep it up.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so just to bring us in, moving on to our next section. So essentially, we have here, Wajih came up with this idea to have a dream lineup picking. So as you can see here in front of you, there's a fantasy board here with different tiers of players, going from $5 all the way to $1. You have $15 to pick six positions, uh, and essentially, yeah, you just have to try to make the best team you can for fantasy purposes. I think what you can comment to this, but most of the boards you'd see usually are for like just a overall perspective. Maybe I'll let Wajih go ahead and speak a little bit to it to give his take on why he decided to do this as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Rosa. I think the like my what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiration, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
from doing this is on Instagram. I'm sure like all of you guys have seen, or Twitter or wherever, like you see like these boards and it's like, oh, you have $15 and like what's the best lineup you can create. And I feel like you can put on your GM cap and like pick certain players with your budget of 15 or $10 or whatever. So I figured that would be a fun thing to do for us, and then we can turn it over to you guys as well. So we'll probably, once we message in the chat, we'll be like, hey, what's your best lineup? Stay tuned to the end of the pod to see what that means essentially. So you can look at this list and kind of formulate your best $15 lineup. It was actually pretty difficult for us, but I'll let Raza take it away in terms of his dream lineup.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with these lists is there's always going to be someone in some tier that shouldn't necessarily be there. And like figuring out who that is and who you should be prioritizing might not always be the easiest thing. So the thing is, we try to make sure that we left this not too open. So we have a set group of people we need to pick. So you have to pick one QB, two running backs, and three wide receivers. So looking at this list, so I started with spending $4 on Justin Fields. I just feel like this guy's been doing such a great job this year. Like he's that dual threat. He's like what you expected from Lamar Jackson this year, and like
Yeah.
how he did in his rookie year or like his second year or whatever, where he was going off with or his MVP year, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's putting up those MVP numbers, and I think if he does well again this week, you can definitely cement him as like a fantasy MVP. The next few people I picked for my three receivers. So I got T Higgins at $1. I wanted to save a little bit of money to go a little bit upper echelon to spend on Travis Kelce. He might not necessarily be a wide receiver, but I think he's just the most valuable asset to have in fantasy in general. So I had to spend up on him. So I put a $4 on him. I'm sitting at $9 right now, so I have three more positions. For my next pick, I took AJ Brown,
Whoa.
spending another $2. Yeah, I mean we covered him in the duds just now, but I feel like I don't know. I feel like what I mentioned earlier about Goddard being out might play a factor, so I definitely think there's a good chance that he can improve his season, even though he's been having an amazing season. And then for my last two picks for my two running backs, I put $2 down for both of them, so I'm at $13 to total of 15. I got Kenneth Walker and Alvin Kamara. I think Kenneth Walker, like after this week, what he did against the Bucks, he had like a really bad rushing line, but he still had like 8 targets and 6 catches.
That's huge. I saw
So
that.
I just feel like that workload, he's a bell cow. And I think that
Yeah.
workload is there to stay. I added Alvin Kamara as my last piece because I had the $2 and why not spend it? Yeah, I mean, the other thing is you don't necessarily need to go up to 15, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Exactly.
mean, if you see someone better in a different category, whatever, you don't have to hit the 15. But I just thought Kamara was the best piece here because he has an easy schedule coming up, and I feel like at some point they're gonna go away from him. Andy Dalton. I know Amar could talk about how he hates that ginger
Yeah.
So I mean, hopefully, like he does have an easier schedule coming up, is my point, and I think with Jameis Winston coming in at some point, it'll also improve his fantasy outlook.
Yeah, I think in terms of his like TD upside, like it'll go up, but like PPR, Jameis doesn't throw as much to his like running backs as like Andy Dalton does, although Andy Dalton doesn't throw to anyone. So it'll be interesting to see like how Kamara does well in terms of
Right.
fantasy.
Yeah.
I think in terms of my list, one, yeah, only one common player between us. I would say Fields is like a lock. Why spend like $5 on Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes if you can get like the one B to those guys, which is Justin Fields, if not better. He's been lately at least. He's been just putting up MVP numbers like you mentioned. So it'll be really that's kind of the best quarterback in terms of value. Um, I took a different approach with Raza. Raza kind of took a balanced approach of like picking, okay, $5, $4, $3, $2, $1. I just wanna. I'm very attracted to points and a lot of points. So I'm very star-studded, anchored, very star-studded. So took a $5 Austin Eckler. So that puts me already at $9. And then Jalen Waddle, I feel like $3, that's a steal. Waddle can easily be like in the $4 category. So picked up Waddle. I'm at $12 now. And then I really only have like, three players, all $1. Ayuk, I really like Ayuk as $1. I just feel the 49ers, in order to win, they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit, right? Even with CMC at the helm, under or behind Jimmy. I just feel like Jimmy loves throwing in the middle. Ayuk is always open in the middle, so that's like a match made in heaven. Dameon Pierce, solid kind of $1 running back, and then Mike Evans. The reason I picked Mike Evans as $1 as my last wide receiver is because he's kind of that boomer bust play, and I feel in fantasy like that's big, right? He'll give you a solid floor of $10, but he can explode for 30, which is super big. But how do you feel about like my list compared to yours, I guess?
Yeah.
Or team?
So I've gone ahead and actually thrown it up on the board so everyone else can take a look, when
Okay,
they watch
nice.
the podcast. But yeah, looking at our teams matched up against each other, it's like it's really good. Like I
Yeah,
like
that'll be
this
fun.
breakdown.
Cool, man.
I like your approach in that you're going star-studded heavy and then like rely mostly on their points
Yeah,
and like having decent players that can give you a decent floor for your smaller picks. I went like you were saying, yeah, I went the safer route in that I'm
yeah,
taking
that's fair.
players that are all even with a few that can break out and have like huge games. So
Yeah,
it's interesting to see how these can be made, and I'm definitely very curious to hear what other people think. Not just with our friends, but if anyone else is watching, you can just throw it in the
yeah. Who
YouTube
knows?
comments. Who knows? But
Yeah,
yeah,
like, comment, and share, and subscribe. Right? Yeah, that's what it is.
yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. Well, I know this was a pretty quick pod, but drum roll, please, for our last um, segment, which is Shaqtin a Fool. And Shaqtin a Fool for this week is none other than Ali Rizvi. A guy did
Ooh.
not hit 100 points, 89 points. Sorry, man. I know like your studs got injured. Cooper Cup like is a lock of 20 to 30, and he got like 2 points getting injured. Raza got caught on a lucky break, man. This man scored 110 points and won.
Finally caught a
That's
break.
ridiculous. Yeah. He hasn't been. He's been getting the short end of the stick all season, so it's nice to see Raza win one. In terms of the luck side of things, but yeah, I think Ali Rizvi's team just did not perform whatsoever. Although his team is looking up, although Cooper Cup was placed on IR, he has Mike Williams coming back, I believe, and a couple other pieces that are coming back from injury. So let's see if he can come back from this, and I think he will. But yeah, that concludes our pod. Thank you for joining again. Put your $15 lineup. We're super curious to see what you guys' picks are. And then in terms of future pods, hit us up if you want to be on the pod. Even if you've been on the podcast or the show, we'd love to have you for a second time. We have the available weeks, so please do hit us up and see you next week. Thank you, boys.
Peace.
Later.